The following presentation, although exclusively is for educational purposes, contains material that may be disturbing, including the topics of elder abuse, incest, rape, and sexual assault. Viewer discretion is advised. For legal disclosure, any and all crimes discussed are alleged until proven in a court of law.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and dudes of all teenagers.
Sunshine, catch all power.
Look at it. I'm having sex with 3 women, and you know what? The one in the middle is half and half.
I recycle my own semen. Just so you know, the previous video was also dedicated to a little girl who accidentally found the easy tag. Her name was Ching Chong.
Come on, dude, give us a program. Nobody wants to see these nips.
Yeah. And you know, I look forward to the eventuality of you and me having our sex time together. I'll do my best to pleasure you and keep you satisfied. This is Ivy. Good for you.
Chris Weston Chandler. I don't know if not knowing who this person is makes you the luckiest or the unluckiest person alive. I say that because there's a lot of fun to be had learning who this person is. Chris Chan is an internet urban legend that has an archive as far back as the start of the internet. Chris Chan is probably one of the most documented internet users in online history, not only by admission of the trolls who stalk his activities online, but of all of the personal anecdotes given to us by Chris Chan themselves. Chris's status as an online influencer was this massive cautionary tale of who should be allowed on the internet. Although the internet is an open platform for just about anyone you could think of, not everyone understands the ramifications and the responsibilities that comes from putting yourself out there for a massive audience to view you. I mean, you're exposing yourself to doxing, possible hate, death threats, trolling, harassment, etc. Now, this is rare and not meant in any way to scare you from the prospects of the online world. If you wish to inhabit the online space, it is very important to keep these 2 things in mind. Learn how to grow a thick skin and keep your private life private. The reason why people are so fascinated with Chris Chan is because Chris fails to do both of these things. Whether this is due to their self-admitted autism or the way that Chris was raised by their family outside of the online world, either way, we know that these 2 worlds coexist simultaneously, as most of Chris's life is documented in some way, whether that be through appearances on television or through their social media. Chris is someone who is easy to manipulate. They are very easy to coax into doing things they don't want to do, and that is a very dangerous combination. Because of people's intense interest in this person who can easily be manipulated, this sort of dynamic can turn into this toxic relationship where people will go out of their way to mess with Chris and be a part of their own life on purpose just to make a chain reaction in Christery, as it's called. Chris is honestly more entertaining and fascinating when it's just them posting their Sonichu comics and their vlogs. The trolling can be fun when it's harmless, such as the Liquid Chris saga, or any of the trolling that actually resulted in personifications of the trolls appearing in the Sonichu comics, it appears that Chris kind of does understand that people do like to document his life. They are fascinated with him to some extent, and he does like playing into their whole online world. He himself is fascinated in his own Christory and contributing to it. But any of the trolling that has to do with like the fake girlfriends and the things that actually affect Chris's life and people being assholes to this person that doesn't understand or comprehend that they are being taken advantage of, that's when it just gets depressing and sad. People who go out of their way to actually hurt Chris Chan just for the meme, like that's where it kind of crosses the line. In the beginning, the saga of Christine Weston Chandler was a cautionary tale of trolling, lack of privacy, and a reliance on the internet to an unhealthy manner that all took place in the underbelly of the internet. Nowadays, the story of Chris Chan is being broadcasted to a larger mainstream audience, trending more popular than the goddamn Olympics on Twitter. For an underground figure of the online world, this is a feat that cannot be ignored. Unfortunately, the way that they got to this mainstream recognition is by doing something so heinous, it had to be heard to believe. On July 30th, 2021, a phone call leaked by a troll who was in communications with Chris Chan discussed how Chris was finally able to obtain their boyfriend-free girl. If you have ever been a Christorian or somewhat dabbled in Christory, even just a little bit, you would know that Chris's main goal in life is to have a girlfriend, or in their words, a boyfriend-free girlfriend. You know, meaning just a girl who is available for Chris to ask out and complete what they call the love quest. Yes, it is stupid. If you don't understand Christory, if you've never engaged in this, it is stupid. It does sound stupid because it is, and it's weird. Trust me, I know it's weird. Describing it to you is interesting, to say the least. Chris has attempted to do this in many different ways, such as making advertising boards similar to that of like a dating site profile, but it's a literal sign. In 2012, Chris completed what they referred to as the fuck quest, which I think is separate from the love quest, but regardless, they posted to their Facebook page that they hired a prostitute who went under the alias Mia Hamm to have sex with Chris. I think this was like before the transition. Oh, and speaking of the transition, Chris has been quoted in saying that the only reason they have decided to transition into Christine is to be able to hook up with lesbian women. They even went as far as attempting to cut a slit in their to create a new listen, just use your imaginations. I need to get ads on this video. But the search has finally come to an end because Chris's new boyfriend-free girl was right in front of them all along. Chris Chan in this leaked call went into detail on how they took advantage of their own mother, their elderly mother who has dementia. Why? Why out of all of the things? You know, I knew at some point in my YouTube career I would have to talk about Chris Chan at some point. I don't know why it had to come to this, but here we are. But
I didn't have any idea that Barbara was that Barbara and you had that sort of relationship. I never got any of those vibes. But how did you approach her?
I approached her with care and caution.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a time approach. So I just gave her comfort and talked with her, and we just branched out slow and steady. And then I encouraged her positively, let her make the first move. And she wanted to do it. And
she did? Really? She made the first move?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow, Barbara. How, if you don't mind me asking, I know that's probably personal, you have to answer, but how is the sex?
I'd say it was satisfactory. It took a while. It took a few tries to...
It took a few tries, yeah. She's older.
And plus, also, she's very understanding about the whole thing as well. I was direct with her, still direct and honest with her. I made sure that I Yeah, obviously, I'm never gonna propose marriage to her at all because we're already daughter and mom.
Yeah, mother and daughter. You know, they say there's no stronger bond than a mother and her daughter. Sorry?
We've been doing it every third night, and the first night being on June 27th.
Oh, you have a routine. Oh.
Yeah.
Can you go? You're making me very uncomfortable. Please leave.
Now, I've talked before on predators online who take advantage of children, right? Children who don't understand sexuality, children who, because of their age, cannot consent anyways, children who don't understand the ramifications of dating and promiscuous activity, you know, all that nasty stuff. Children, at the very least, can be taught to speak up and to identify those situations to protect themselves. Their young brains are still developing and learning new life lessons all of the time to develop a moral compass. They are so important to educate and to protect. Nowadays, with how many examples of online influencers being exposed for predatory behavior, younger online users are more educated now than ever before. But oftentimes when discussing vulnerable groups that do get exploited and victimized like this, we don't always discuss the elderly because they are of legal age. By like a lot. And if they ever are brought into this conversation, it's more often than not the elderly being the perpetrators of perverted acts and not the actual victims. So they aren't really considered when in discussion of crimes of this nature, especially since statistically the elderly aren't as sexually active or interested in sex as, say, you know, a younger person going through puberty might be. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. And when you're an elderly person with dementia who doesn't remember half of the shit that goes on, let alone can consent because they don't know what consent is anymore, it's like, that's a whole different ballpark. Now, I have to present this theory because I feel like a lot of people being exposed to this story for the very first time don't understand or know the history of the people who have been documenting this person for many, many years. And the many sagas that have taken place in this person's life that could possibly explain this entire thing. Not justify, but explain why things ended up the way they did. And you know, obviously this could be, you know, me playing devil's advocate or wishful thinking, so, you know, yeah. Okay, so in regards to Christian and how we've previously discussed that they're very vulnerable and can be manipulated into doing things that aren't exactly safe, or manipulated into saying things that aren't even true, there were these trolls online called the Idea Guys in 2017. They're not really a part of Chris's life now, but at some point, they really played into Chris's delusion. Christian, as heavily documented online, is a high-functioning autistic person, but also Chris is incredibly delusional. Chris literally thinks that they are married to Mewtwo. I wish I was making this up. I really don't know. Huh? So the Idea Guys really played into this delusion a lot. Christian literally believes that their Sonichu universe and Sonichu himself are real. Chris believes that CWCville, which is a place that he made up for all of his Sonichu characters to live in, he believes that place is a real place. There was a part in Christory where Christian legitimately thought that CWCville was merging in with our reality. There was also times where Christian was apparently possessed by Sonichu for a whole year. So you can see why I would think that playing into this person's delusion wouldn't exactly be the best idea. Not that that really needed to be said, but just in case you forgot. So these Idea Guys played into this idea and convinced Chris that they were harboring the spirits of their characters, and convinced Chris to write an arc in the Sonichu comics of their characters being literal Nazis. I am not kidding. They have also extorted money out of Chris. $6,000 to be exact, to save the imaginary world of CWCville from complete and utter annihilation. It's hard to keep a straight face when talking about this, guys. This is ridiculous. So, I mention all of this because over the many years of trolling, Chris has been convinced to say and do things by trolls and to an extent cannot differ fantasy from reality and cannot understand the consequences for his actions. Chris has been convinced to perform a botched vaginoplasty on themselves by trolls. They have been convinced to send money and their own Sonichu medallion to the trolls. They have even been convinced to confess that they are a pedophile by the trolls. It's very possible a troll has convinced Chris into confessing to them having relations with their mother. Because Chris is possibly schizophrenic, they're also very vulnerable to outside influence, and Barb is no exception. Chris is probably playing into a troll's hands in all of this.
I am happy. I'm in a bag. I got updates. Aren't you glad? So apparently I was right on the money when I said all this pre-recording of all of the new news that came out about Isabel. So now we're gonna talk about it. This person who had the phone call with Chris Chan and leaked it to the public, apparently she's a fucking crazy person. Not only has she been coaxing Chris into having sex with his mother, but also she has a long history of animal abuse, ranging from neglecting her cats to boiling her fucking hamster. So yeah, not a very trustworthy source, pressuring Chris into having sex with his mom for her own sick pleasure. Fuck that girl. Fuck.
And it is possible that none of this is actually true. Now, again, that's probably hopeful thinking, and maybe the denial I have in trying to find, like, any excuse for this not to be real, because let's be honest, nobody wants this to be the reality. Like, I don't want to live on this planet anymore. It is still possible that this is all just an illusion of Chris Chan's, because this still needs to go to trial. All of this is alleged, but if I have to ignore the previous theory that I just presented and look into this objectively, it is more than likely that in this case, Chris is unfortunately telling the truth, and they did in fact take advantage of their mother. Whether Chris is aware that this is incredibly fucked up and wrong and is incredibly damaging to their reputation is kind of up in the air at this point. But Chris doing something like this isn't actually as surprising as it should be for me, knowing what I know about Chris Chan and their past. Chris has always had a fetish for older women, and this includes their own mother. Chris has always had some sort of romantic bond with their mother, and because Chris is functionally disabled in social situations and understanding social cues, they probably did interpret their mother's advances as romantic. But even so, it is important to recognize that Chris is not an example of, like, all high-functioning people as a whole. High-functioning autistic people see this as deplorable. Trust me, as somebody who is related to a high-functioning autist, he doesn't want to fuck his mother, so this isn't a representation of who they are. And of course, I'm saying all this just to, shoo away any generalizations happening when discussing Chris Chan. A lot of people online have a poor perception of autism and high-functioning autistic people, mainly because their only example has been Chris Chan, who is the worst example. Autism does not result in the degradation that Chris Chan has fallen to. This same conversation can be had about the trans community. See, because Chris Chan is part of the trans community and claims to be trans, a lot of this discussion has been used to either excuse their behavior because they identify as trans, or to justify previous existing transphobia. On the one side, you will have these people who will turn the conversation about elder abuse into respecting pronouns, excusing abuse because the perpetrator is trans, and so on and so forth. I have to mention that this part of the conversation is very minuscule at best. This isn't the majority of the conversation. These tweets were incredibly hard to find, so their voices aren't as loud as the major conversation calling out criminal behavior, regardless of gender identity. Despite that, I find it interesting that these people are willing to die on that hill for someone who is on record saying that they only identify as trans to convince lesbians to sleep with them. I have been using gender-neutral pronouns for Chris because I'm not the trans police. I don't think I have any say in the conversation when I don't have, a good grasp of my own gender identity. So, who am I to say whether Chris is trans or not? However, I think the discussion of whether Chris is trans or not is completely irrelevant. It means nothing. Which is why I don't understand why talking heads like Blaire White and Tucker Carlson are using Chris Chan as a scapegoat to make trans people look predatory. Maybe the views were low or something. Maybe it was a slow news day and nothing interesting was going on. I don't know.
That I have covered some of the most depraved, interesting to say the least, just gutter butt individuals that exist on the internet.
Blaire White is someone who exposes predators in her community, which is the trans community, which isn't exactly a crime or anything, that's her priority. However, I find it odd that she bitches about how people won't focus on the main issue, but spends the majority of her own video complaining about the small percentage that turns this into a gender identity issue, as if she isn't the same person bringing these comments to the forefront of the conversation.
The part of the story that is just a little cherry on top of a horrific, disgusting situation, the part that just makes me want to drive my pink car off of a cliff, is the fact that Chris was actually filed as a female for the mugshot and will likely, because of that, be placed into a women's prison. So a fully intact biological male, his mother, okay, and is then placed into a women's prison. Congratulations, society. Congratulations on this just miraculous nosedive that we've taken as a whole. And there is another sizable chunk of people who, their main takeaway from hearing about a horrific and violent of an 80-year-old with dementia is that we should be using the right pronouns for Chris. We shouldn't be misgendering Chris. There are a lot of people who their only opinion on the entire thing, their only statement on their Twitter feeds or their TikToks or wherever the fuck they're talking, is that we should be using the correct pronouns for Chris. And I'm kind of like, what exactly does it say about you that upon hearing about such a horrific thing, your only thoughts are about pronouns? And then you wonder why no one takes you seriously.
Also, do you remember when Blaire apologized and cried about how she misgendered Riley Dennis for so many years and that she will never dictate anyone's trans journey ever again? Because assuming that would put them in a place that she was once put in. If you don't remember that, that's okay, because given what she has been doing now, misgendering and arguing why misgendering Chris is okay, literally in current year, it would almost seem like that video just didn't fucking happen.
However, Riley recently made a video that completely shifted my opinion in that regard. In this video, Riley reveals that she's been on hormones for an entire year and is actually going in for her first transition-specific surgery extremely soon. Needless to say, this completely came out of left field for me, and for me to say anything other than I feel bad would be disingenuous. My opinion of Riley has changed as a result of this new information. Not of Riley's opinions, not of Riley's views, not of Riley's politics, but of Riley being trans or not. Riley as a human being, all the other stuff aside. Point blank, my perception that Riley was lying about being trans or pretending to be trans was just incorrect. And for me to not come on here and correct that after the amount of response videos I've made where I assert just that, one of them being just less than 2 weeks ago, would be wrong. Riley's video really got me thinking, and I feel bad. Not for criticizing Riley on Islam, not for criticizing Riley on Trump, not Riley's politics, any of that. I don't regret any of that. But the incessant push to prove that Riley was not trans, I'm just realizing was probably really hurtful.
Who are the most determined to convince you that white supremacy is America's biggest problem. Why is that? Simple. Every minute you're angry about race is a minute you're not thinking about class, which of course is the real divide in this country. Working class people of all colors have a lot more in common, infinitely more in common with each other than they do with some overpaid MSNBC anchor. And if you were allowed to think about that for long enough, you might start to get unauthorized ideas about economics. And that would be disruptive to a very lucrative status quo. So they whip you into a frenzy of racial fear so that it never enters your mind. It's a diversion. Everyone else hates each other, they get to keep their money. Pretty tricky. Unfortunately, it's also destroying the country. This is the path to civil war, obviously. A YouTube personality called Chris Chan has just been arrested in Virginia on, of all things, incest charges. Authorities say Chan was having sex with his 79-year-old mother who has dementia.
You know, I love that Tucker Carlson thinks that Chris Chan's real legal name is Chris Chan. Republicans have officially ruined the Chris Chan story for me. If it wasn't the incest, then it was the mainstream media that ruined the story of Chris Chan for me. They fucked everything up.
I remember very vividly when you said on our air, if we don't put the brakes on this, we're going to get men housed in women's prisons, and you were called hysterical or silly or whatever. Now you're actually seeing it happen. What's your reaction to it?
Absolutely. We know for a fact that California passed SB 132 last year. It went into effect in January of this year. We see approximately 300 applications from male prisoners to be housed in a women's prison in California. We approximate that 20 of them have been granted. There are 20 men being housed in women's prisons in California now, as far as we know. We suspect that none of the applications has been denied. We also know that in Washington state, approximately 9 male convicted felons are being housed in a women's prison. One of those men has been convicted of multiple murders of women, and another one of those men has been convicted of raping a 12-year-old girl. We know that in states all over this country, there are various policies or actual statutory laws on the books that allow for this, in fact, mandate it.
Okay, but what does that have anything to do with transgender people? Please tell me what that has to do with transgender people. What is it? Because I don't know what source she is using for this. I don't know where I can look for this information that isn't biased because she doesn't give a source for me to look into. But if I am going to take a guess, she's mostly referring to these men as transition women, or she's making this up. Because not only are there only 2 states in the entirety of the United States that actually house people via their identifying gender, but they also have to meet certain qualifications in their transition to even be granted access into those prisons. But the mass consensus in the United States right now is that you are to go into the gendered prison based on sex alignment or genitalia configuration at birth, regardless of appearance or identity. So please, someone, tell me, what does Chris Chan have anything to do with the trans women being in bathrooms or in their prison of their choosing? And why are the most extreme examples like Chris being used as the crutch to the whole argument against all of this fucking bullshit when Chris being trans doesn't fucking matter? Has everyone seriously forgotten the fact that Chris Chan confessed to having sex with their mother? What does Chris being trans have anything to do with the fact that Chris stole $750 from their own mother, even though there is a court order in place stating that they cannot contact their mother in any way? Ladies and gentlemen, the story of Chris Chan is a fascinating one. It is one I do recommend you look into. There's a person who has been making a documentary on their life, and the documentary is at 60 parts right now, and we aren't even in 2018 yet. That's how long this series has been going on. That's how insanely long of a history that Chris Chan has. Their Sonichu comics are also fucking hilarious, but if you are going to read up on Christory and explore the most documented person online, do so knowing this person was never the protagonist. Even in the beginning, Chris has done some Very fucking weird shit. Before transitioning into Christine, in search for their boyfriend-free girl, Chris had a crush on their only one true gal friend. Her name was Megan Schroeder. In an attempt to disprove the allegations online that Chris was gay, because he was extremely homophobic at a point, he drew drawings of themselves engaging with Megan. Use your imagination because I need money. This understandably made Megan incredibly uncomfortable, and in response to this drawing being posted to the public, Chris's apology to Megan was more of them just saying they had to let their frustrations out somehow, or else they wouldn't have known what they would have done out of impulse to her. Chris was never a good person. They may be victims of trolling and doxing and exploitation. They may have lost all of their privacy. But Chris's behavior in general outside of the trolling attacks were just as disturbing and disgusting. The actions that Chris has taken in this situation are their own to face the consequences for. And if you ask me, as fascinating as this person might be, they deserve to be locked away in prison for a very long time. This is probably obvious to say, but Chris needs intense therapy. Bob and Barbara Chandler's parenting has also been heavily documented and criticized over the years. Chris's parents, well, the best way I can put this is that they didn't take Chris's diagnosis of autism seriously, like at all. In fact, they barely recognized the autism as something as Chris would genuinely need help for. Chris needs some serious help. They need real professional help that they should have gotten from the very beginning. I mean, maybe if Chris was given proper therapy and was properly given treatment options for his autism, maybe the story of Chris Chan wouldn't have happened at all. But that's a lost cause now. And Chris is gonna go down in internet history as the most documented predator online.
Chandler is the mayor of Quickville. He's got a lot of things to do. Got a lot of China to steal. Mary Lee Walsh is always waiting to ruin his fun. With the chaotic combo at his side, the day is already won.
You guys are probably not going to tell because I'm going to heavily edit this, but I am sunburnt and I'm having an allergic reaction. Why do I do this? Wait, hold on. Hello. Keep your filthy man hands off my daughter. Okay, bye. See ya. Oh, no. No. I can't fucking believe. Who is playing?